Yo, how's it going everybody? It's Sketch and welcome back to the channel. And on today's episode we're going to take a look at Journey to Silius for the NES. This was a side-scrolling action platformer set in a war-torn future which, believe it or not, was almost the official Terminator game up until the licensing fell through. It was developed by Sunsoft and released worldwide in 1990, and had the licensing stuck, this would have been one of the best Terminator games out, but even without the license it's still a fun yet blisteringly difficult action platformer. Story goes a bit like this. You play as Jay McCrae as he tracks down the terrorist organization that killed his father, a scientist responsible for developing space colony 428. He finds a floppy disk containing the plans for the colony, but also several messages saying that should something happen to him, Jay should set out to finish the job in his absence. From there, Jay vows revenge on the terrorists and embarks on his adventure. Graphics wise, this game has some pretty sick sprite work and level design. The opening level kicks off in a bombed out cityscape, which robots are everywhere, and missiles are flying in from the background to the foreground, which will sort of set the tone for the rest of the game. Stage hazards, aside from terrorist and robotic threat, will be your most common enemy. Levels are fairly long even though there is only 5 of them. Stages have a lot of moving parts, and the game looks pretty good for the most part as well. The first stage and the last boss encounter have a serious Terminator vibe to them, and it's honestly a bummer that the license fell through because this would have basically nailed the vibe almost completely. I mean, have you ever tried the Terminator game that Mindscape released for the NES? Spoiler alert. It fucking sucks. Gameplay wise, this is a run and gun action platformer that has some quirks. Each stage has a main boss and a mini boss that is right before the main encounter, which will drop a new weapon for your arsenal. The boss fights are all huge mechanical behemoths for the most part, and the first battle with the helicopter that drops ads down at you is very similar to the first boss fight in Super Seed or even Shinobi's Black Turtle encounter. From there, the pattern starts to come together. Most fights will revolve around jumping and hitting a critical spot on each boss at pretty much every encounter, and these will ramp up from the amounts of bullets and lasers flying at you and the amount of damage each boss will dish out. Thing is, you don't get the new weapons until you defeat the mini boss, which is right before the main boss. This oftentimes leaves you with little to no special ammo for boss encounters, so you'll be using the base gun a lot, and precision shots are crucial to getting through boss fights. Aside from the boss fights, the level themselves also start out fairly challenging and only go up from there with the platforming, which there is a lot of. You'll also have to get used to the way that Jay jumps, which is the longer you hold the jump button, the higher you'll go. That's not without the game throwing ads and other obstacles in your way which can knock you back, especially when jumping over gaps. Gaps are gonna smoke you the most in this game since there are so many hazards on screen most of the time. And the final stage was an auto-scrolling section, which is also kind of a big fuck you for making it this far. It's going to murk you probably a few dozen times and probably wipe all your continues. You also only get 3 continues, and with the low amount of health pickups that usually drop in stages, you might be hard pressed to get to the end. But there's a solution for that. At the title screen, by hitting the B button 33 times exactly and pressing start, this will open a menu that will allow you to sound test and also up your continues to a max of 9. This will come in clutch, especially on the back end of the game. Sound wise, this is one of the best soundtracks on the NES, period. The music in this game is reason enough to give it a go, even with its at times brutal difficulty. The tunes here are absolutely top notch, and you'll hear them a lot more than likely, but at least they're all belters. Sound effects here are also solid in true early Sunsoft fashion, with explosions, gunshots, and general sounds all sounding pretty good for the most part. If for nothing else, the audio department in this game bangs just about every way. Overall, Journey to Silius is a solid action platformer even with its at times relentless difficulty. This is one of those games that isn't impossible to beat, but it does require a fair bit of practice to get through since there are so many things that are ready to murk you at just about every turn. Once you get comfortable with the controls and see the patterns in the boss encounters and the levels in general, there's a very rewarding and fun time to be had. It would have been cool to see what the prototype looked like with more of the Terminator assets intact, but this still goes down as one of the best unofficial Terminator games out there. Journey to Silius gets an 8.5 out of 10 and is absolutely worth checking out just for the music alone, which is only a piece of the total package. You'll definitely have a mission ahead of you tackling this for the first time, but it's a lot of fun once you figure it out. And I thank you again so much if you made it this far in the video. If you found these reviews helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you can use it as a resource. Check back often. We'll have more reviews and commentaries coming up in the future, and until then, everybody stay safe out there, take it easy, and I'll see you on the next one.